Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, try to steal our $400 security deposit by being a dong? Fine. Now you can pay $1,300 US. After that, block my promotion? You silly man. Finally, bully me? Fine. But I'll start to fire as I leave. Before we get into today's episode, remember to subscribe so you never miss another episode of r/ProRevenge. Try to steal our $400 security deposit by being a dong? Fine. Now you can pay $1,300 US. So this story takes place like 5 years ago, when my husband and I were broke college students with a young baby. We worked hard to afford our itty little duplex, $600 month, and necessities, while trying to finish our degrees to one day get ahead. Our duplex was one in an entire neighborhood owned by a large company and managed by a super sketchy married couple who lived on the same street. Before our kid was born, we did the normal excited new parent thing of painting his nursery and decorating, blah blah. Our lease stated we needed permission to paint, which we obtained from the property manager, the husband of the couple. He insisted it would be fine, and, being young and naive, we didn't get it in writing, because he was so chill about it. So we paint and move on with our lives. A little while later our lease was up and we had given notice to vacate as we were moving closer to my husband's school. The property manager was understanding, everything was fine, and we scheduled our move out inspection. Prior to this inspection, we specifically asked him for the name of the paint color we needed to use when repainting the nursery. He flat out refused to give it, saying it was unnecessary to paint as we'd been there so long they'd be painting the whole duplex anyway. Okay, cool. Move out inspection day comes and goes. We left the house in better shape than we found it, aside from a small area of torn carpet right along a seam in a doorway. The property manager inspected and said everything looked great and we should get our whole deposit, $400, back minus a few bucks for the torn carpet. Sounds good, boss. Enter a period of weeks where we waited for our deposit, eventually leaving messages upon messages with false promises or no return calls at all. Eventually, over a month later, this culminated in a phone call with the property manager where he said, and I remember this almost verbatim, "I don't know what you're so worried about anyway. It's only like $200 you're getting back." He cited the painted nursery and the huge mess left behind as deductions, and I coldly informed him we'd be going to court then, because we didn't feel we owed for those reasons. The place was spotless when we left aside from the 6-pack of beer we left him in the fridge for being chill. Not 1 hour later, he called back and miraculously our refund check had just shown up in the mail. Already knowing he was trying to frick us, we installed a recording app on my phone, one-party consent state, and went to the office. The check indeed was only $4,200 of our deposit, and included no list of what they charged us for. Important detail. We intentionally goaded him into admitting that he had told us not to paint and that the house looked great on move out, and went on our happy way, revenge plan already unfolding. We didn't cash the check and instead emailed the CEO of the entire property company, copying in the property manager, and detailing the entire process. The CEO sent back a smartass email with a cute little typed up list of deductions, including all the things we were specifically told we wouldn't be on the hook for. A fun detail was that even by his own math they owed $230 of our deposit. No one really had an answer for why they then tried to issue a check for $200, but whatever. Joke was on him, because we began digging through all the state regulations on security deposits and refunds, hoping to prove that our length of stay meant he couldn't charge us for wear and tear things like carpet cleaning, etc. And in our search, we instead happened upon a statute requiring landlords to return security deposit refunds and an itemized list of deductions within 30 days, or lose the right to withhold for actual damages and be subject to treble damages if the landlord is thought to be maliciously withholding the refund. So we typed up a demand letter for our entire security deposit, citing the statute, which he had broken, because we didn't receive any refund offer or itemized list until 6 weekends later. And when he sent us smartest reply, we filed in small claims court for our entire deposit plus treble damages and court costs. Now, I don't know if it's clear at this point, but I can be really freaking petty if I feel like someone is trying to frick with me. And it was clear this guy made a career out of stealing money from low-income renters who likely could never afford to fight it. I was pissed. I spent the next month before our court date compiling all email correspondence, in which he fricked himself over numerous times by providing written documentation that he exceeded time limits, charging correct amounts, etc. I also compiled phone records showing dozens upon dozens of unanswered and unreturned calls to the property manager and detailed accounts I'd made immediately after hanging up of lies from the property manager. I printed out a screenshot from the company's own website detailing the CEO's role as the legal advisor, so I could innocently claim, shouldn't he have known the statutes for these issues? I printed all the relevant statutes and highlighted the important parts. And then I made 3 freaking copies of everything and nicely compiled each in a binder complete with sleeve protectors and page numbers. One for our own reference, one for the AOLA property manager or CEO. We weren't sure who would show up, and one for the judge himself. We also took our handy little recording of the property manager admitting to all the he lied about and then pretended to have never said. Needless to say, the judge laughed at how prepared we were, asked if we were law students, and then awarded us treble damages and court fees as well as interest. I will never forget the CEO's face when we looked over and smiled at him. All his AOLA emails and disregard for the law were on the table, and rather than giving us the original $350 or so we were promised from our deposit, he ended up paying us over $1,300 a month later. It was glorious. Edit. I completely forgot until my husband and I were just laughing hysterically about this, but the CEO also filed his response to our suit with a counterclaim for $1,225 for expenses incurred as a result of the actions of plaintiff. He never really said how he got to that number, but in his last email before we sued, he did say, "I hope we can avoid litigation in this matter, but we will engage aggressively if forced to do so. LOL. Block my promotion, you silly man." This was a few years ago. I got a job in a cinema. I was 4 or 5 years older than most of my coworkers, whom it was most of their first jobs. Having had a couple of jobs previous and a few years of maturity under my belt, I quickly became a very valued employee, so much so, I was given a promotion to supervisor within 6 months. The general manager loved me. I was a Swiss Army knife. I would take care of projection duties when the projection manager was at our other sites. I dealt with the busy periods very calmly and was able to diffuse potential situations into getting worse. I was very good at my job. I would be in charge of the building when whatever manager was there had to step out. We had 1 GM and 4 floor managers. They all liked me because I made their jobs a lot easier. When I was working, they didn't have to work as hard, and when it wasn't busy, they didn't have to work at all. 2 more years go by and one of the floor managers says she's leaving in 3 months. Without having to say it, I know I'm going to get her position. They always hire internally and I am head and shoulders above my co-workers. This is where it gets interesting. Let's call this manager Blobby. So Blobby does a stock take every Thursday. I always worked Thursday mornings in projection, so for the last couple of years had a standing arrangement to drink with my pals on a Thursday night. I freaking loved my Thursday drinks. I worked most weekends, so this was my Saturday night. One Thursday I'm doing my projection checks and the GM says that Blobby is sick. Would I be able to do the stock take? Frick it, I'll do it. At 9 AM to 11:30 PM. We have to count the stock at retail after we close, hence the late finish. It's a horrible shift, but the brownie points are worth it. So next week comes along and, instead of doing my projection shift on Thursday, I'm in to do a stock shift. I asked the GM what's going on and he said Blobby requested me in. Even though me and the GM get on really well, he is gonna side with his manager over his supervisor. I explain I go out Thursday nights and Blob says, "Listen dude, I'm actually doing you a favor. When the manager job comes up and you know how to do the stock take and orders, it will look fantastic and you'll 100% get the job. I grit my teeth and go along with it. It makes sense to learn another avenue of the job. So Thursday nights come around and Blobby sits at his desk with his feet up while I basically do his job. It's not a difficult task, and after a month it's a piece of piss. Let me paint a picture of Blobby. He's short, fat and balding, ear pierced. Thinks he's cool, but he really isn't. Think David Brent from The Office. Keep him on your side and work is a lot easier, because he can be quite petty, but what he done next was far from petty. 3 months go by and we've 1 week left before our manager leaves. They start the interview process, but for some reason the owners decide to sit in and do the interviews. Really strange. So the interview starts and I'm hit with, how do you expect to be our manager if your timekeeping is so poor? They have a list of times I clocked in late. 5 minutes here, 7 minutes there. The thing is, timekeeping wasn't an issue. You come in late the odd time and then if they needed you to stay back, most would. Take a penny leave a penny scenario. But these guys go to town on me. They have surveillance footage of me taking in a delivery, which isn't part of my job, without wearing a high-vis jacket. Your complete lack of concern for safety regulations is appalling. Emails from a few irate customers over the years that complained about me. I done the right thing in all those circumstances, but taken out of context look like I was in the wrong. I've given up fighting my corner. I know I'm not getting this promotion. My co-worker got it. If it wasn't me, I was happy it was her. She was also very good at her job and would no doubt make a fine manager. So after giving so much for the company over 3 years, I found myself doing things half-assed. Why go the extra mile when it wasn't appreciated? So I'm still on stock duty on a Thursday night. While Blobby is down dealing with a customer, I'm in the office inputting the stock figures. I accidentally close the program. I open Blobby's folder where the program is and see a file saying discrepancies. I don't know why I clicked in, but I did. I see my name mumbled in his folder. Of course I'm going to click in and see what's going down in Funky Town. I'm freaking shocked. There are about 5 subfolders in my folder. Lates, dangerous delivery, potential stealing, associates and hungover. We've already talked about lates and dangerous delivery. The stealing one is me leaning over a closed till. It looks like I'm trying to hide something, which I wasn't. Utter nonsense. Associates is pictures of me standing with my co-workers chatting when it wasn't busy, and hungover was screenshots from my Facebook when I was out the night before and then in work the next day. It was clear as day that the Sant handed this information to the owners. Finishing up that night was so freaking tough. I wanted to rip that earring out and pop his baldy head like a pimple, but I played it cool and finished my shift. Monday comes around and I ask to talk to Grams. I explain what I've found and it's really serious, because it's invasion of privacy. CCTV should only be used to review footage when something goes wrong, not used to stalk me. The GM says he only found out after the interviews were over. The reason he didn't do them was because he was also leaving. He was a good man and didn't bullet around. He said Blobby hated me. Don't know why, but he was always bringing up issues with me. He then recommended me getting a new job, because more than likely Blobby was gonna be the new GM and my life there would be unbearable if he got it. So I talked to my brother and sister, who are a lot smarter than me, about what roads to go down. File a complaint? What's the point when the owners used his dossier against me? Bring him to court? Too much hassle for very little payoff. If you're still reading, I applaud you. High five. This is where it gets fun. Blobby wants the GM position more than anything. He has a bit of competition, but he's the front runner. I could spend the next 2 months looking for work, or could be ambitious and try to bury this piece of it. I chose the latter. So I'm drinking with my girlfriend one night and we're joking around about how to get revenge. She scared me a little with her suggestions. Some tame ones like he hit his car and then a straight jump to burn his house down. If any authorities are watching, we were only joking. And just like that, fat boy signed his own death certificate. Whilst I'm on the stock shift, he makes a passing remark. We have to start nailing this stock take down to the last popcorn kernel. The yearly stock take is in 6 weeks and owner is doing it, and she's a ball breaker. I know all about her. She ripped me to pieces in the interview. Don't worry Blobby. Mumblebum is on the case. Those numbers will be perfect, and he goes for the Oscar with this line, "You're a good worker. Freaking travesty you didn't get the manager's job. But when I get the hot seat you'll be made a manager as soon as a position comes up. No interview required." What a prick. I'm so good at the stock take that he doesn't even check my work. I'm making the orders and counting the stock. So over the next 6 weeks I start to frick it up. I put the orders in on a Wednesday for our Friday delivery. I normally eyeball it and see what movies are coming out, and we always had a nice bit of stock on hand. Not too much, not too little. That's about to change. I start adding 25% to every order we get in. I show Blob the dockets. He signs them. Happy days. Then when I'm doing the stock on the Thursday I put in that we ordered our usual amount. The system balances on the computer, but what we have in the stock rooms is a lot more. I do this for the next 4 weeks. I'm royally fricked if he ever actually looked in the stock rooms. They're nearly exploding with product. Lucky for me and unlucky for him, he's a lazy aunt. It's the last week before the ball breaker does the end of year stock take. I balance everything on the computer as usual. Before we call it a night I tell him to check the pre-sales tomorrow. We're gonna have a busy weekend, so I say to him, email our suppliers and get a bit extra. It will all get used anyways and we're looking perfect on the stock count. Granted I've been adding on 25% for the past month or so, but he goes ultra blobby and bangs out an emergency email to our suppliers asking could they double the standing order for tomorrow. Check fricking mate. When I get home that night I type up my resignation letter. I ask the GM, who has a couple of weeks left, if I can leave immediately due to unforeseen circumstances. He agrees, because he's a good man, and gives me his personal number and an amazing written reference, wishes me to best and thanks me for all my hard work. Like Andy Dufresne, I've crawled through a sea of it and came out clean on the other side. I confide in one of the regular workers what I've done over a couple of pints. He said the next day when the delivery came, they couldn't fit it all in the 4 different stock rooms. Rule of thumb would be about 3 weeks stock on hand. We must have had about 8. Now I know you're gonna say I'm really hurting the owners. I'm not. All of the stock will be used. Except maybe a few bags of popcorn that will expire. Everything else will get sold for an exorbitant profit. Word on the grapevine was that the yearly stock take went into the wee hours of the morning. 3 AM to be precise. Blobby was boxed in. The stock was a cluster frick. Tens of thousands of euro off. He could take the blame himself and look incompetent, or say I did it, to which he looks worse considering he was behind the dossier to slander me. I don't know what he did. All I know is he didn't get the GM position and within 6 months was working selling furniture. I never spoke to him about it, but one would hope he knows it was me who fricked him. Frick you Blobby, you rotund walking beanbag. Thanks for reading. Bully me? Fine, but I'll start to fire as I leave. The title is meant as a metaphor. There was not a literal fire. I wish I had though. I worked at a Fortune 500 company for almost a year and a half. I won't name names, but it was a shady company to say the least. I started in their quality department, but I was literally fired for being too quality for the quality department, because I would report sales agents that were forcing crying retirees into making a purchase. So they moved me to the business verification department, so I could instead make these customers happier with their purchase. I'm sorry to say I was far too good at this job as well. I got constant kudos from the quality department that I always hit my marks. I always verified and corrected information, followed procedure to a T, and even took on several extra projects just to help out, including preparing and sending gifts out to our higher volume customers on behalf of the sales reps. I was always on time. I was friendly with everyone, and yet I didn't quite fit in. As a matter of fact, only one person on this new team was someone I could talk to. The others were all mid to late 30s, with kids and husbands, ex-husbands. Best way to describe them, it's the Heathers that grew old and hated it. They would constantly bully me. I don't mean tease me. I mean they would joke about forcing me to work in a broom closet. They would report me for cell phone use even though cell phones were allowed. Just no recording or video calling since we would verify card and address information verbally. They would deliberately leave me out of company food orders and celebrations, and even convinced the manager not to promote me, and instead promoted someone who had been there less time with worse quality, only because she fit in better. She'd literally cost the company money shipping product to the wrong address multiple times, and still was promoted within the department. They would also berate me for the state of my desk. I will say I don't keep a super clean desk, but we are not customer facing, and it was my organized chaos. It wasn't old food or trash, just a general scattering of notes and trinkets that never overflowed past my desk. The real juice here though, was about 4 months into this position, I started documenting all the bullying. Every instance, every word, with a date and time and often a reference within the company's system for where to locate proof of the bullying, all on those little notepads. Well, one day I come back from lunch and they had gone through my desk to clean it, going so far as to move my trinkets and pictures around on my desk. I took everything home that day, but I know they'd actually been after my notebooks. Thankfully I just had to buy a third one. I filled the first 2 up, so it was mostly empty. The final straw came on a fateful February afternoon. It was a Thursday. The one coworker I got along with and I had been texting back and forth, mostly Craigslist ads for job openings and funny memes to get us through the day, because remember, phones are allowed. She goes to lunch as I'm coming back, and I get called into their lawyer's office. Me and my one and only friend were being given formal write-ups. Why? Direct quote, your coworkers know you are texting about them and laughing, and they don't like it. So I was getting a write-up because of an assumption that they had no proof of to begin with, and wasn't even remotely true. The topper of this was as I exited the write-up, one of them was FaceTiming her husband, which was against the rules, but of course she wasn't even spoken to about it. I was done. Beyond done. I put my head down, barely worked the rest of the day. When I got home, I texted my manager and let her know I was using PTO and it'd be out Friday. I spent the whole weekend working on my resignation, because I wanted it to be just right. You see, it'd been there a year and a half at that point, and I knew a few things about how this shady company operates by now. I knew on Thursday this was going to be my first time ever to quit a job, and I wanted to do it upright. I wrote in the specific details of the bullying. Dates, times. I mentioned I had many more examples documented. I wrote how it was known behavior and even condoned by the manager. I wrote about the write-up. Then, after many critiques, I saved it as a draft. I walked in on Monday morning, 8 AM on the nose. I didn't bother clocking in, and it already cleaned out my desk, remember? I sat down, printed 2 copies of my email, and then sent it directly to the CEO. I of course dropped a copy off with HR, and then walked out. Not a word to my manager. Only my one friend knew the plan. You see, I knew they'd snuff out the fire if I said anything to them about why I quit. Sweep it under the rug. Oh well, one more person who quit. By involving the CEO, I eliminated that as an option. In 30 minutes their lawyer was calling me for an exit interview. They were worried I would sue for a hostile working environment. In hindsight, I should have, but I was more worried about my mental health than monetary compensation. I found out from my friend that I had in fact started that fire. The whole department was put under review for bullying. Cell phones were completely banned, and the manager and her lackeys, last I heard, had been demoted. I also heard whispers that they'd dissolved it completely and merged it with the quality team, but I'm not positive on that. I'm sure it didn't fix everything, but I hope they at least keep their hands out of other people's desks from now on.